My name is Erica, and I am with Lenzing, New York, and Business Development. This season, Lenzing is highlighting Lenzing Modal Future Black. Lenzing Modal is not only about softness, but about long-lasting color as well. We are also featuring the sustainable denim wardrobe for Carved in Blue, our latest specialty fiber, Refibra Lyocell, and Tencel for bed linen in-home textiles. To learn more about these topics, please visit us at the Lenzing booth at D07, which is straight across from here. You can also find 23 Lenzing Innovation Mills in the front left, located around the Lenzing booth. This seminar is being videotaped and will be available in the coming weeks on the media links listed on the cards available at the information desk outside the room. For more information about Carved in Blue blog, you can also find an information card outside of the room. Today we're presenting Fashion 101, How to Start a Fashion Line. Exciting. Mercedes Gonzalez is founder and director of Global Purchasing Companies. I don't think I have to read your bio, but this workshop is geared towards helping the new fashion designer, production person, and even retailer who wants to start their own private label line. Learn from this practical and insightful crash course on how business is really done. Please welcome and give a big round of applause for Mercedes Gonzalez.
All right, so there's a lot to cover. I do want to start with talking to you about different bits of advice. You're going to get advice from a lot of different people. You're going to read a lot of different things. My point of view and our point of view in the office comes from that our day jobs, what we do is that we're retailers. We buy for stores, we work with stores, we open retail stores. So we have a very practical point of view. This workshop, and actually the program that we have for the designers now, started about 9 years ago when I was asked at a trade show to do a quick workshop called What a Buyer Wants. And the first thing I said is you need to have clear line sheets, and everybody in the room went blank. And these were already brands showing at this trade show. So there is such a lack of really practical information. You could go to school for 4 years, 8 years, get a master's degree in merchandising, and still don't know what the best way to source cotton fabrics are or circular knits are for. So I like to start with a dirty joke, so if anybody's going to be offended, it'll only take 2 minutes. So this guy gets a letter from the IRS. He's really nervous because nobody likes to get audited by the IRS, right? So he gets this letter and he gets into a panic, and the first thing he does is he says, I have to go see my accountant. So now he gets stressed, he goes up, he goes and sees the accountant. He says to the accountant, why am I getting audited? Listen, you know how business is, they always pick on the small man, don't worry about it. I've been your accountant, everything's legit, everything is legal. We're gonna go in there together, we're gonna talk about all your expenses, we're gonna prove to them that there's nothing here. He goes, but this is what I would like you to do. I want you to wear a really shabby suit, a really like scuffy shoes, don't really shave, don't wear a good watch, because when you walk in, I want the IRS people to see you and say, oh, look at this poor businessman, let's leave him alone. Sounds like good advice, right? It's coming from the accountant. He should know what he's doing, right? So now he goes home, he talks to his wife about it, and he goes, you know what, I have a really kind of itchy, bad feeling about this. Let me ask the lawyer. So the next day he goes to the lawyer and he explains the problem. He tells him he's being audited. He tells him what the accountant said. He goes, that's it. I'm outraged. I cannot believe how, the government is cracking down on little people. Why don't they chase the big companies? He's like freaking out, right? He goes, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go there together. I'm going to stand behind you. I'm going to stand behind the accountant. And whatever they say, we're going to sue the pants off of them. And I want you to wear your best suit. Wear something Tom Ford. Wear a Rolex watch. Wear like a fancy attaché. Because when you walk in, I want them to say, this is an important businessman, don't mess with him. So now the guy's like completely freaked out, right? Because he's gotten two professional points of view, two different bits of advice. So what does he do? He says, I'm going to go see the rabbi. Because the rabbi always has a good story, right? So he goes to see the rabbi, he explains to the rabbi, hey rabbi, look what the accountant told me, look what the lawyer told me. I'm not really sure what to do. It's really, really good advice. And the rabbi sits back and pulls on his beard and says, this reminds me of the story of the young bride. Told you, they always have a good story, right? The young bride was really nervous about her first honeymoon night with her husband. It was the first matrimonial night. She didn't know what to wear. She didn't know what to do. So she says to her mom, Mom, what should I wear on my matrimonial night? And the mom says, you have to go full-on flannel, high neck, long sleeves. You have to look pure and virginal for your first for your first view with your husband. So that sounds like good advice, right? But then she decides to ask her friend who's been married and divorced twice, What do you think I should wear on my first honeymoon? And she goes, oh, honey, if you don't hit them hard, you need to wear tassels and peekaboo panties, because if not, this is not going to work out. So now she's like, Rabbi, what the hell does this have to do with my problem? He goes, doesn't matter what you wear. At the end of the day, you're going to get fucked. I'll be here all week. So that is our industry. So the idea is, how do we prepare ourselves for that fucking not to be so painful? And the idea is that you have to be able to manage the risk. So I just want to go through a couple of quick slides. This is my Instagram, Mercedes GPC. Please follow us on Instagram. And again, I'm going to stick around as long as I can and answer as many questions as I can. But probably the next best step for you is to meet with me one-on-one, and we have a feasibility consultation and I'm very, very honest, because for me, it's harder work to take on a client that's not going to be successful than a client that is going to be successful. So we're pretty brutal about that. So I want to start with this question, because a lot of people come into this industry thinking that it's a very glamorous business, and I always ask them straight up, do you want to be rich or do you want to be famous? And usually we don't even take on the clients that want to be famous, because fame does not pay the rent. I can tell you dozens and dozens of CFDA designers that literally don't have 2 nickels between them. I want you to be rich, because you know what? Every single rich person will be famous. Just ask Bill Gates. Just ask Mark Zuckerberg. Was their goal to be famous? Absolutely not. So this is the mentality that I want you to have. Everything that we do has to be for the only purpose of making money. And a lot of new designers, like, I don't know where they get this strategy from, but there's a strategy out there that says, oh, I don't care if I don't make money on my first collection, my third collection, my 30th collection, as long as my name is out there. No. Everything you do is for the single reason of making money, period. That's it. There's other ways of marketing than you giving stuff away. And trust me when I tell you, if you don't price things accordingly or at market value, and we'll talk about what that is, you will never make enough money to continue your next collection. Because again, it's not an overnight success kind of story. So wait, I just want to stop for a second, because I want to talk about the internet, because I don't have a slide about that before I forget. The internet, for all that you hear, does not make money in apparel. It doesn't. There is not a single online retailer that is profitable. And I used to love the example of Nasty Gal, but now I don't even have to use her because she's bankrupt, right? And if you use any of the other ones, you know, ModCloth got bought out by Walmart, right? Zappos, right, is owned by Amazon. Net-a-Porter, Shopbop, Revolve, you name them, none of them make money online. And I'll tell you why. Because fashion is an emotional sport. When I buy something, unless I'm buying commodities, unless I'm buying a basic legging, you know, for like a yoga class or whatever, and I go to Amazon, what am I going to do? Who has it cheaper and who's shipping it to me for free? How does anybody make money like that? And you don't buy a new brand because you saw it online or you saw a nice Instagram picture, because now you worry about, does it fit? How's the quality? You know, and you've seen all of those, like on Pinterest, have you seen it? Like those failures? Like when people buy something online and then they actually get it. I'm going to post one tonight. It's a bikini. Who's doing bathing suits? It was a bikini online, and then it only fit her cat. That's how small it was, right? I'm posting that, so you better follow me. So that's what I'm talking about. People don't have that trust. Of course, you know, when it's direct from factory, where the factory is making stuff for other people and then also selling online, the fit's going to be better and the quality may not be so great, but the price is very cheap. But since none of us own a factory, it's not a revenue stream. And if I haven't convinced you, talk to me later. It is not the way to build a brand. You cannot go direct to consumer online. So having said that, so what does a buyer want? This was the part of the original presentation. They want basics. They want quality, they want timing, and they want price. And what I mean by basics, I don't mean basic fashion. I mean, these are the things that I expect from you. I expect you, you know, and sometimes a designer will come to us and say, well, it's costing me a lot of money because I'm buying my fabric from Mood and the factory is upcharging me because I'm making small minimums. Not my problem. It's not my problem. Why are you making that my problem? You have to figure it out. Where are you hitting the break even? And we're going to talk about the math. where you're hitting the break even, where it is cost efficient for you to produce and for me to make a profit too, because that's what we're in business for. So the buyers are looking for something new, but yet familiar. So I get this a lot from designers too. They're like, oh my gosh, you've never seen anything like this before. It's so revolutionary. It's so avant-garde. It's so, all of those words to me mean unsellable. Absolutely. There's a reason why I haven't seen it, because it doesn't sell, right? So you need to be able, and again, this is sometimes when I work with designers, they have a little bit of an ego. They have a hard time with this. You have to be able to separate yourself from the product. And you have to be able to compare yourself. Oh, mine's is like a Ralph Lauren tie meets Lily Pulitzer and goes on vacation to Haiti. Like, now, oh, that sounds exciting. And it's all things that I understand. So that's how you want to be able to make those comparisons. The next thing is you want to be able to make doing business with you as easy as possible. If you start asking me, the buyer, to look at your collection, oh, what fabric would you like this in? What colors would you like this in? What kind of print would you like this in? And am I designing the line, or are you showing me a line? So you need to know exactly what it is that you're doing when you come to me with that. The fit needs to be consistent. And I'm going to tell you, as a buyer, that we do buy emerging brands and we do recommend it for our clients, I know that the fit's not going to be consistent, but it has to at least fit. Like, we have gotten samples in where the neck, you can't put it in over your head. Like, come on, like, you have to do a fit test. Anybody planning on doing plus sizes? My advice to you with plus sizes, you have to actually fit each of the sizes. You can't go from a 16 to a 26 and expect that the grade is going to be correct. So it has to be, and that's where the money is going to be spent, on you doing your grading and your fitting. A good story isn't enough. And I love, like, everybody has a good story, right? Oh, this is made by a sustainable tribe of many people that live in the Swiss Alps and can only sew when the moon is full. And you're like, whoa, that's really cool, but it doesn't pay the rent. You know, you have to, everything, and this is, it's almost sad to say this, but you need a story. There has to be a reason, because remember, we have to build that emotional connection. Why your bathing suit, or why your shirt, or your suit, or it has to have an emotional connection, because at the end of the day, if all of us never bought a single piece of clothing again, I promise you we won't be walking around naked. Right? So it's even funny, like, with the girls, like, they'll say something like, oh, where, is that top new? I'm like, no, I went shopping in the back of my closet. Anybody do that? Yeah, we pull out something, you're like, oh, I forgot about that, right? Yes. So the other thing is, buyers don't have time to waste. So you have to have all of your credentials, all your marketing materials, your line sheet, your lookbook, your Instagram, your Facebook, your website, all up to date and as flawless and as easy as possible. And I'm going to give you some examples of, like, emails and things of that nature. And then here's the other thing too. The line I absolutely hate is when people email me and say, this is perfect for your store. I don't have a store. We work for stores. So you have to be able to do your homework. And a lot of it, and I'm going to give you some tips on doing that, you have to almost become a cyber stalker. You have to be able to follow the stores that you want on your social media and see what they're doing, see when they're having a sale, see what they're doing, what other brands they have, what price points they have. Because already you might say, these are the stores I want to sell to, but when you start following them, they're like, oh, they're always running a sale. I don't want my stuff to go on sale. Or you know what, they don't have as many followers as this other store that maybe bought less from me. Like, these are all the things that you want to know. When you start making your sale call, you never want somebody to say to you, this isn't for me. Because if they say that, you haven't done your homework. So that's, I'm going to leave it for there, and we'll talk about it more. So the idea is, and this is now I'm talking to the people that have been making things themselves, how do I work as little as possible for the most amount of money? That is the mantra. If we are doing everything ourselves, and in the beginning, you will be doing everything yourself, but we're not doing the craft part of it. We're not sewing the buttons, making the patterns, doing the cutting. We're not doing that. We're the project manager. We're the orchestra leader. You have to be able to outsource, and this is the beautiful thing about our business, is literally everything can be outsourced. I spoke to a couple of people that said that they're not from the industry, that they're teachers, whatever it is. Fantastic. You know what? You can outsource a designer. There's ghost designers, like there's ghost writers, there are ghost designers. Most well-equipped factories have a product development person inside their factory that will help you with placement of your prints, that will help you with some of the history closet, and I'll show you some pictures of that, that you can work together with the factory directly in developing your collection. So that shouldn't really be a barrier. So I love this picture, right? So let's talk about this picture for a second. That's Oprah, and that's Ralph Lauren. They're hanging out in his ranch in Montana, right? Driving around. And when you think about Ralph Lauren, what do you think? 100% Americana, right? You think Native American Indian, you think the country, you think beautiful mountains, and you see what she's wearing, that very indigenous American Indian print. Have you ever seen an American Indian wear Ralph Lauren? What is he selling you? Emotion. This is what we have to sell. So now let's look at Ralph Lauren. He has every single price point from Purple Label, the most expensive Bestow product that you could buy exclusively at Bergdorf, right? Sometimes at Barney's. And he goes all the way to Chaps that he sells at Walmart. He has every price point. When the economy is bad, he's making money. When the economy is good, he's making money. When the economy is in the middle, he's still making money. This is where we want to be. We want to be able, from the moment that we think we're going to start this project, how are we going to scale? How are we going to grow? And now let's talk about one more thing about Ralph Lauren. Do you realize that you could buy everything from Ralph Lauren? You could buy sheets and towels and rugs and furniture and house paint. The only thing, I don't know why he doesn't have a license for this, but just think about it. You have the whole Ralph Lauren bathroom. How about the Ralph Lauren toilet paper? Right? You need to have like the little embossed with the RL, right, to make it all fancy. That's the only licensee that I can think of that he doesn't have. This is how we have to think. So now I must take a moment and quote from my favorite movie, Wall Street. Anybody watch Wall Street? Yeah. Anybody watch The Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah. Okay. There is a scene where Michael Douglas is driving down Fifth Avenue, right? He's with his protege and they're talking to each other. And he says, you know what? You can never be like me because you can't think like me. He didn't say have the connections, have the money, have the network, right? He said you cannot think like me because you want to fly in first class and I own the plane. Own the plane. This is the mentality that we have to have for this business. And it takes time. It's not an overnight success. It's a process. And it's a process that has steps. And you know what? Here's the other thing too. And I know that one of the biggest fears is failure. There is no failure in this business. You know when you fail? When you gave up. There's learning. When you get that, who got those bad samples, right? Come on, we all do, right? Yeah, okay. It's not a failure that you got a bad sample. You're going to laugh at it and go, oh my gosh, what the hell were they thinking? Let me do this again. And that's really how you have to think of it. And you know what? Not everybody has that personality. There are people like, Lynn will tell, where's Lynn? Lynn will tell you the story that this guy like literally had a meltdown where he crawled into a corner and held his face because the color pink wasn't right. Nobody dies, right? This is our industry. Nobody dies, you know. Some people will be disappointed, but nobody's going to die. So now let's talk about a couple of other things. This is how we're going to start. So I talked a little bit about online, how it's not even up here, right? We're going to target boutiques. It is important that you start thinking of 100 boutiques that you want to sell to. And it can't be like, you can't say like Barney's or Bergdorf or like Express or those are national chains or those are big department stores. That is not where we're starting. We're starting with boutiques. And again, I've given this exercise to many people and sometimes they'll do like every boutique in Brooklyn. No, no, no. Every boutique in the country. Like remember, own the plane. We have to think of the big picture. Oh, well, how am I going to go see them? You're not going to go see them. You're not going to go visit 100 boutiques. We're going to do everything virtually. And we live in such a great time. Like when I first started a million years ago, when I wanted to visit, you know, when I wanted to sell a store in Chicago, I had to get on a plane, go to Chicago, walk street by street by street, right, with a map in my hand, right? There's no Google Maps. And get the business card of every store I wanted to sell to and then write them a letter. Can you believe that? A letter. Hi, my name's Mercedes. I was in your store 3 weeks ago because that's how long it would take me. Now we click on a button, we send them an email, we can Google everything that they've ever done, videos about the store, everything. You can do your homework literally every single night. Specialty chains eventually is where you want to go, where it's more than one store. Department stores, yes or no, it's for some people, it's not for everybody. Right now, I'm advising to stay away from department stores as much as you can, unless it's a very specific kind of item that we're making just for that department store consumer. And the last one is you will end up being your own retailer, whether it be online or brick and mortar. So now, wait, didn't she just say like no to online? At this stage, you can do online because everything you sell online is going to be profit, because we're not putting anything into production that hasn't hit a break even. I'll talk about the math in a second, but that's the point. And the idea is that now you have 100 stores across the country where I, as the consumer, am trying something on and go, oh my God, I love this. Does it come in black too? No, it doesn't. And then I'm gonna go online, but it is on your online store. And that's because I already have the physical experience of your brand. That's when it's gonna drive the traffic to the online. So that's how you're gonna be successful. So, emotion. Emotion is a big deal because at the end of the day, that's really what we're selling. And I love to use this example of the De Beards. The De Beards in the early, I wanna say like the mid-'80s, they came up with, they did a big study first, and they said, women that are getting engaged for like 100 years get one solitary diamond ring. The same number of people are getting married every year. How do we increase our diamond sales if it's just one diamond ring, one diamond in a ring? So they made this big campaign, and it was called the 3 Diamond Engagement Ring. Anybody remember this? I'm not wearing mine today, but yeah, I got one, right? So the idea, the whole campaign was 3 diamonds, was one for your past, one for your future, and one for your present. I don't know how I got my husband to buy me a diamond for my past, but he did. So now, but it created the emotion. They increased sales 3 times based on something I didn't need, but now they created a want. And this is where you have to go with the emotion. So now they're like patting themselves in the back. Oh, we're so smart. Look at this. We got to upsell the same customer. Like, this is a big deal, right? And then they said, well, what about all the women that are not getting married? How do we sell them a diamond ring? And then they came up with this campaign that was called the Right Hand Diamond Ring. And it's a very powerful, I don't know if you could read it from there, but it says, your left hand is your heart, your right hand is your voice. Your left hand says, I do. Your right hand says, I did what? Your left hand knows the answers. Your right hand asks all the questions. Women of the world, raise your right hand. It's powerful, right? They increased sales 1,800%. They created an emotional want where there wasn't even a need. And this is what we want to create. Now, having said that, oh, this is the picture of the woman, by the way. Look at her. She looks like she eats men for breakfast, right? She doesn't need like no guy to buy her. But now let's talk about this, because the last couple of years, and you know what? This is going to be so politically incorrect, but I already started with a dirty joke, so you know me, right? This does not work. This is not the emotion that we want to create. I mean, God bless all these people, and they're very brave, but this does not sell fashion. This is scandalous, and I feel that it's also, what's that word that I want to use, when you're like manipulating somebody to your own interest. So when they use mentally challenged people, when they use plus-size models, when it's not a plus-size line, when they use the handicap, this doesn't create an emotional want in my mind. This creates pity and sympathy. And pity and sympathy do not sell. They don't. But now let's take the same concept and look at this guy. He's a wounded warrior. Anything you put on this guy, I'm going to buy. I don't feel sorry for him.
Can I buy him?
Yeah, exactly, right? But you don't feel sorry for him, right? Because this is strength and this is power. Look at her. She's a high fashion model. She lost her leg to a childhood bone cancer when she was very young. You don't feel sorry for her. This is power, this is strength, this is emotion that you want to create in your visuals and in your lookbooks and in your advertising. So now we're going to skip to something else completely. When we look and when we go to school, they tell us that this is the system to make your samples. First, we have to pick out our fabrics. There's a million fabric people out here that you're going to go touch and feel, go crazy. You know, it's really funny. Have you done that yet? When you start feeling the fabrics, and you're like, I had a client that I told her she was going to like wear out her thumbprints, right? Because she was going like crazy. I'm like, nobody like 1 gram weight difference. Nobody, only you know, right? So this is where we have to kind of like be cool about it. Then we have to make the patterns, then we have to find our trims, we have to cut sew grade, and then we have our sample. That is a lot of work. And again, listen, I was born and raised in New York City. My parents, my uncle was a dress manufacturer on 38th Street. If anybody is pro USA and pro garment, it would be me, but I'm pro making money. And you cannot make money in the United States if you have, let me rephrase that. If you have a high-end contemporary line that's very complicated to make, and you have the time to sit in factories, then yes, this is the place to manufacture. But literally, like when we work, and we work with a lot of factories here in New York and in California too, and actually 1 and 2 are in Austin, we don't have production specialists at the factories. You know what we have? Enforcers. Enforcers, you know what I'm talking about, right? And what is an enforcer? Because the factories, they're so maxed out in capacity, they don't have enough machines or people to do the work that they have, that what they do is somebody comes in, you come in and my production's on the floor, you say, you know what, take Mercedes' production off, I'm gonna pay you $1 more, and I'm gonna pay you $1 in cash. Guess whose production is going on the floor? Mine. So that's why you need an enforcer to actually be there to make sure that your stuff is getting done when it says it's gonna be done. So even there's a couple of New York City brands that are really manipulate a lot of the capacities here in New York. And in California, I haven't had a lot of luck with California. We do work at a couple of factories, but it's like that last minute, like, I don't want to do it, right? But you have to kind of thing. And it's because of cost. And I have one example, I don't have it with me, but we costed out a polo shirt in California, and my cost price was $20. And that's not making 3,000 units. That's not making 30, right? 3,000 units was $20. When I wanted my retail to be 48, it wasn't going to happen. So we have to be really practical. And then again, people use a lot of these buzzwords. Sustainable. What does that mean? Really, what does that mean? And really, if I really wanted to get into like all the craziness with like cottons and sustainability and like ethical, just a perfect example. I'm sorry, I'm going off track a little bit, but I just want to show you this example. I was in a plane coming back from Bangladesh, right? And this woman was bragging to me. She worked for a really big brand here in the States, and she was bragging about how she's paying her factory workers more than everybody else. And I'm like, oh, and she's like, yes, because we pay fair, it's all fair trade, we pay the most. And I'm like, well, what are you paying? She's like, 20 cents. Let me just go back. So the minimum wage in Bangladesh is 8 cents. She's paying 20 cents. So she's patting herself on the back and giving herself flowers and champagne. Look at me, I'm like, really, 20 cents? How about paying them $3? Because guess what? At $3 is the calculation that's when it's not a fair wage, it's a living wage. That's when you could actually feed your family and educate your children. So now, you know, this big shot, 20 cents, right? But she still felt because she was paying so much more than everybody else, she was doing the right thing. So what is the right thing, right? And this is why, and again, you're gonna feel overwhelmed, like, oh my God, there's so much poverty, and I could tell you crazy stories about all of that, but you have to focus on the bigger picture. They don't need your charity, they need your work. Let them work, let them figure it out. Even if we go and look at what happened with the Chinese community. The Chinese in 2 generations now don't have enough workers to work in the factory because their kids are all educated. We can't even say that as Americans. So we have to be really open to what the buzzwords are and what they really mean and what's important to us. Now, having said that, me personally, I like working with micro factories, that's what they're called, usually family businesses. So this is another thing, ready? I'm an advocate of child labor. I say that very proudly, right? Because yeah, people are like, what, that's crazy. But usually these factories, the whole family is working, you know? So let's go back, because this is just because there was a movie about this. The building that collapsed in Bangladesh and how they blamed H&M for making cheap clothes there. What does H&M have to do with construction of a building? They could have been canning tuna fish in this building and it still would have collapsed, right? And did you notice that it was a whole village? Because their kids, their grandma, their aunts, they all worked together. So again, when we work with these factories, when you get to visit these factories, you cannot put Western standards on everything that's going on in the world. And you just have to focus that what you're doing is the right thing at that moment. So my choice is to work with a full-service factory or a vertical factory. And I'll just tell you what that means. A full-service factory means they don't make the fabrics there, but they have the network. So they know the guy that makes the zippers, the guy that makes the labels, they know the guy that's gonna package it for you, the guy that's gonna ship it for you, the guy that's gonna cut it for you. And they work together in doing all of this. A lot of this stuff can be internal, but a lot of this stuff they outsource to other people. And I'm gonna tell you something, the truth. You will probably pay a little bit more for a full-service factory, but it is so much worth it, because if you could just give somebody your sample and say, make this for me, and it's hands-off, and have the time to do everything else, to develop, to market, to sell, to travel, to do all of those other things, it's money well spent. Money very well spent. A vertical factory, ideally, if you're doing like denim or a lot of knit tops, a vertical factory actually makes the fabrication, or in your case with the printing and the leggings, a vertical factory would be important, because you could actually tell them, I want only 2.5% Lycra versus the 98.25% cotton. Like, you could actually make your own blends of fabrics, right? So that's really kind of interesting and kind of fun, and especially when you're printing stuff on that. So that's the difference between a vertical and a full package factory.
Mercedes,
yes.
you mentioned lookbook. Do you still think lookbook has the same relevance it used to have?
Yes, and I'm gonna go there. Yes, absolutely. So now let's talk about how we're gonna communicate with the factories, right? So this is a tech pack. And listen, every single factory out there, you're gonna make a t-shirt and they're gonna say, can you send me a tech pack? You're like, for God's sakes, it's a t-shirt. Don't you make a t-shirt? If they don't make t-shirts, it's not the right factory. So that's another thing we're gonna learn. Factories are item specific. So you cannot go to a t-shirt factory and tell them to make me a shirt dress. It's not gonna happen. They'll tell you they can do it, they can't do it. Trust me. They always say yes, but the answer is no. So, and you'll see, like, when you go here and you look at their history clauses and you see the samples that they're making, you know, look at what they're specific for. If they're making khaki, you know, cargo pants, don't ask them for a knit sweater. It's not their thing, right? So they're very item specific. But now your head might blow up. You're like, oh my God, I'm gonna have 20 different factories. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. But how about this? Maybe we don't need to start with 20 different product categories. I'm looking at you over there. Yeah. Maybe we could just focus a little bit and just start with one thing, with men's suits, with swimwear, with yoga clothing, with ties, right? You want to be able to just focus on one thing. So a tech pack, even though a factory will ask you for it, is not always necessary. And personally, they're expensive to do, and even with the best made tech packs, is Ann here? She could tell you a couple of stories, she's back there. She could tell you, we've had like technical geniuses do a tech pack and we still get the sample wrong. And you still waste the same amount of time, but more money. So this is another way of doing it, and again, you might have the creative vision in your head, but you don't know how to use CAD. So you can hire a CAD designer to come in and say, listen, I want you to make me a lace dress on top, you know, a cinch waist, and I want it to be like chiffon with a little knit jersey underneath, right? And they'll draw it for you. But now, when we make the first sample, what holds on paper doesn't always translate to 3D. So in this case, if you look at it, the lace was too flimsy to hold up the whole dress. So we had to be able to reverse it. So we made it sheer on the top to give the same kind of illusion, and then we trimmed it in the lace. And also when we started to cost it, the lace that she was using was more expensive than the whole dress together. So now we have to like cut down the use. And again, all of that is not gonna be so clear in your first design until you start developing and you start actually sewing the product. And that's another thing too. When a factory quotes you a price like, oh, how much is that? Oh, that's $12. They have to really make the first sample first for them to really know what it's going to cost. Has anybody had that happen to them yet, where they get quoted one price and then when they make the sample, it's like 3 times the price? No? Okay, that's good. It will. So now, I know that there's a couple of designers here that said that this happens to be an artist. She's an artist. And these are her impression paintings that she does. And, you know, she's gone to Art Basel. She's very famous for her artwork. But again, not everybody can buy a $20,000 painting, you know, once a week. So the idea is that we made dresses inspired by some of her prints. But again, as an artist, and this is where you have to step back and you need a production person or you need the factory to deal with it, because that twig, if it didn't hit on the right angle of the left knee, she would have a meltdown because it wasn't interpreting her art right? It's not art, it's fashion. Art belongs in a museum, fashion belongs in a store. That's how we have to look at it. And let me just tell you one more like piece of vocabulary. There is no such thing as perfect. It's only sellable. Because if you think, oh, I'm going to wait for that perfect sample, that perfect sample, that perfect sample, you will shoot yourself in the head because it will never be what you see in your mind's eye and what you think it could be as opposed to what's actually going to be sellable. So now, I love this example of a history closet. This happens to be a vertical factory, and you see that closet that she has there? Those are the swatches of all the fabrics they have ever made. So now, we're not reinventing the wheel. I know some of you might think you're really like creative geniuses. It's been done. So the idea is to take what's been done and work from it and make it better. You ever go and you go to a store and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have thought of that? Yeah. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing as art directors, as creative directors, as designers. So then, we look at the factory. The factory was in its working condition. And this is another thing, too. Don't be afraid of using a factory that's on Mars. Because of Skype, that Mars factory is now in your living room or in my office. And as you can see, like, we didn't have a fit model. And again, I always try to do things on a budget, but we have a mannequin that's a size 6. So now we're with the client, we're with the factory, and we're with my team here at the office, and we're saying, you know what, we want the drape to be a little bit lower on the neck, we want the sleeves to be a little longer, and when you're explaining, can you believe this is how we work a fitting now? Through Skype. I mean, you've been in business a long time. Remember back in the day, this took like 6 months to go. Now it takes 6 minutes on a Skype call. This is unbelievable, the time that we're living in right now. And if you guys don't take advantage of it, it's really, there's no reason. There's no reason. So now we do a lot of Skype calls and we get the fittings done. And I love this. So this is another example. You see that back wall filled with boots? Guess what this factory makes? Cowboy boots. They don't make galoshes, they don't make sandals, they don't make slippers, they make cowboy boots, right? So now you go to the factory, you look at their history closet, and they'll say like, oh, we can't tell you the brands that we work for, but you're turning over the boot, it's like, Old Gringo, Stetson, you're like, oh yeah, you work with high quality boots. And then you're actually looking at their production, you're looking at the quality, you're looking at the skins that they have. So now, if you notice the designer that we were working with, she had a CAD, very simple CAD, and so in boot making and like with clothing, instead of making a sample with footwear, it's called a last, right? And lasts are really expensive to make. They're like $400 or $500. But now we saw that we didn't have to pay for a last because they make a short boot already. And she wanted flower embroidery. Guess what they make? Flower embroidery. So we didn't have to guess. And then the other thing is she wanted I wish I had the other picture. She wanted a very specific color turquoise for her boot. But instead of using the Pantone number, whatever it is for turquoise, she asked the factory, what skins do you have that are in the light blue? And they showed her oh, thank you. Oh my God, you're amazing, thank you. Yeah, so so the idea is, and again, remember when I said about being perfect? It wasn't the perfect turquoise color that she wanted, but it was a turquoise that was sellable. So all of these compromises we need to make, right? Because again, if she was to dye her own skins, first of all, it takes a very long time to do, and that's another expense that you have. But if we're already using the fabrics or the skins, in this case, that the factory has that's already making for somebody else, all of a sudden now your minimums become less, right? Because they're already making it for somebody else. So this is where you have to like do a lot of compromises. So, and this, we were talking about this before, this is product development, where I actually go to a factory, so you can see like my assistant is wearing this capelet that I had bought in Anthropology, and then it showed up in a Macy's ad like, a year later, and all they did was raise the price and change the label. It was exactly the same thing, right? So the idea is that if you're making something basic to go along with your collection, like going back to the ties, while your ties are not basic, the shape of the tie is. So now they're telling you, I need a tech pack and I need, you say, you know what? You don't make ties because I need to go to a tie guy, right? So you have to be able to find the factories that are already making the stuff that you're working with, so that then there's a history closet and a pattern that you can product develop from. Now again, are a lot of high-end designers that have very intricate that pieces of apparel that really need to be draped on a body. And again, working with these very high qualified factories, these seamstresses, these tailors, these bestow artisans, that's when I use the Skype and we drape together in order to get the first patterns. So there's definitely a way that you could do all of that and still try to save some money. So costing. This is like the biggest question of all. And this is like my favorite pet peeve when a designer comes to me and it's like a crazy price and I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, but that's what the factory is charging me. Once again, not my problem. So costing is based on consumer price resistance and not on the cost of manufacturing. It doesn't matter what it costs you to make. It only matters what people are willing to pay for something. So this goes back now to your first homework of finding the stores. So we're just doing a project with a photographer called Rose Hartman. And we wanted to do a really high-end T-shirt line. And I'm surprised that people will pay $200 for a T-shirt with a silk screen on a synthetic fabric. I'm like, what? That's not me, obviously, right? But that's okay because we have enough 100 stores that are willing to buy that and that have the customer that's willing to pay for it. So now my $8 T-shirt, guess what the retail is? Well, it's not 200, I couldn't do it, but it's 145. But my cost is $8, right? So it doesn't matter what it costs, it only matters what people are willing to pay for it. And then unfortunately though, some people, it costs you $200 to make that T-shirt and you need to sell it for $100. That's not gonna work. And again, you're tempted to say, well, I'm just gonna try it. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. We are a for-profit business. So costing, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna work it backwards. So everybody teaches you work it forward, we work it backwards. First, we identify the retailers. We identify our competition, who we hang with. We look at their retail prices, and now we know what the retail markup is. Most stores, in men's, it's still like a 2.3 markup. In women's, they're going for a 2.5. Accessories, swimwear, they're going for a 3 because there's a lot of markdowns involved with that, a lot of theft with some accessories. So knowing what the industry parameters are and being able to offer the retailer a tiny bit more margin already puts you in a competitive brand. So I might say, hey, listen, I hang with Vineyard Vines and Ralph Lauren ties, but you're gonna make more money on me because of my margin and you're gonna sell it for a lesser price. All of a sudden, that to me is a selling point. Why? You hang with these guys and I'm gonna make more money? Yes, I'll take it. You wanna be able to have that kind of a conversation. So from the retail markup, we're gonna divide that 2.5 to get our wholesale price. And from our wholesale price, we're gonna divide that, and this is the rule of thumb. The minimum amount that you're gonna divide it by is 3. From production cost to your wholesale cost, it has to be 3 times. If you can't get 3 times, you're not gonna make money on the product. Trust me, I'd rather you get like 6 or 7 times, but in the beginning, it's a 3 time that is your goal. Now, I'm not saying like, so again, everything has like a variation. There might be one item in your collection that might only give you a 2.2 markup, but you need it because it's like the real art piece or the really interesting piece. But then all the other ones, you're getting a 4, by all means, you can afford that 2.2. But all the other ones really have to have the higher margins so that you have a cost average. So it really becomes like a numbers game. So the next thing is managing your risk. So this is where the big, like, oh my God, all my money is gonna go into the, yes, it is. And that's why, like, rule number 1 that I didn't mention is keep your day job. So when people are like, oh, I can't balance everything, then you know what? You can't balance production or logistics or sales because it is a balancing game. It really is. And it's a discipline game. So you have to say to yourself, when I'm starting this collection, I'm gonna keep my 9-to-5 job, I'm gonna get my health insurance, I'm gonna get my vacation day, I'm gonna get all of this. And guess what I'm doing 3 nights a week from 8 o'clock until midnight? My part-time job, which is this. And it's a discipline. And when your girlfriend calls you on, let's go out for drinks on Wednesday. I have to do my job, right? And it's a discipline that you have to stick to. And trust me when I tell you, it will pay off. But don't quit your day job. So now, put everything, so when in a cut-to-order position, you will only put into production the things that have been sold. So now in your collection of, let's say, activewear, right? You have a 20-piece collection, and only 10 of them really sold. Don't cry about those 10 that didn't sell. Be happy about the 10 that did sell, right? So now, once you hit the minimum, so now let's talk about minimums for a second. So now let's say you go to a production factory that says our minimums are 300 units. Okay, don't let that number scare you, because what that really means is you have to pre-sell 100 units, because we're marking up 3 times. So once you sold 100, in theory, you have enough money to pay for all 300 pieces, be in an in-stock position, which is extremely important because people want to replenish, and that's how you reach out to people, and that's how you can afford to have your own online store, because it's all profit. So now, once we hit the break even, you're in a positive cash flow position and in-stock inventory. Now you're in a real business. So now, let me backtrack for a second, too. When you are seeking money for production, so in my experience, and I work with a lot of venture capitalists, nobody wants to talk to a startup. Nobody wants to talk to somebody who needs money for a fashion show. Nobody wants to talk to somebody who needs money for sampling, because they figure if you don't have enough money to even make a sample, you're not really in business. This is a fun project for you. This is a discovery project for you. It's not a business. But now when you go to an investor and say, I need $300,000, or let's just take it down, I need $100,000 for production because I have $300,000 in orders, he's not stupid. He's going to know that that's money. You already have the orders, and you need a third of the money that you need of the value. So, and I'm not going to tell you, these venture capitalists, they like to be called venture capitalists. I like to call them loan sharks. And, it's not cheap. It's 15, 20%. And honestly, you only need the money for like 120 days. Because you're going to ship the goods to the store. They're going to make the goods, right? You're going to ship the goods to the store. Most of the boutiques are going to be on a credit card term. So that means that before you ship them, you're going to charge their credit card. And every time you charge the credit card, you just put the money away for the investor. Once he's paid off, then now all of that is your profit. And usually, in my experience, it takes like 2 or 3 seasons of working with a venture capitalist until you build up enough capital yourself in order to go forward. And honest to God, this is where every brand fails. There's so many brands I don't even want to mention. Like, there was just Men's Market Week. Everybody's talking about these 2 or 3 guys, and I know what they're paying for production in the factories, and I know what it's retailing in the store. There is no way that the 2 will ever equal a profit. Never, never. So that's what you want to be very savvy about this, and it's really important not to give into it. So I'll stop there about that. But there might be any questions.
What is the wheels deal? What does that mean, wheels?
Oh, so that's the other thing. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I am not a fan of consignment. I absolutely detest consignment. I hate consignment. I feel if a retailer asks you for consignment, 2 things. They don't believe in the brand, or they don't have the money to buy that brand. And if they don't have the money, they're going to close up on you overnight. So you don't want to do that. But now, if I'm in an in-stock position, I can offer the retailers offering me consignment. So we call it on wheels. So that means that we bring it in for 3 or 4 days. We do an event. We present it to the customer. They like it. They buy it. The store will buy the balance of the order. So they're also called trunk shows. You've heard of that, but the thing is that that word is also overused. I feel for it to be a significant trunk show, it just can't be your product in the store. It has to be an event. So if you're doing swimwear, there should be somebody with cover-ups and beach umbrellas and hats, and it should really be like a summer event, right? Instead of just like one lonely guy with a rack at the back of the store. You've seen that all, right? It's kind of sad. You're like, here, I'll buy that sample, it's sad. You don't want that. And the thing is, too, that when you own the goods and they're paid for, you have a feeling of power, too. So when the stores start bossing you around a little bit, you're like, you know what, I could just sell it online. And it's all profit when you sell it directly to consumer, managing the risk, and having the exposure of the retailers doing the marketing for you, too. So just keep that all in mind. So you have to be the social butterfly. So people ask me, too, like, oh, what's better? Is it, Instagram? Is it Snapchat? Notice I don't even have Snapchat on there, right? I refuse. But anyway, if that's your customer, then that's where we have to go. But the answer to that is every medium of social media is important, because people like to get their information the way they like to get their information. So this is really, really important. Just talking about banks and venture capitalists, there's a gentleman called Gary Waxner, and he sits on the board of the CFDA. He also owns or chairs Heller Hilden Financial, which is a factoring bank that if you work with department stores, you're gonna need, and he's a real big advocate of the emerging designer. This guy, even though he has an Instagram account, is still all about Twitter. So guess where we have to post if we wanna get his attention? Twitter. So we have to keep that all kind of in mind. So this, even though you may not have a sample to post, from the minute you decide that this is what you're going to do, you have to start creating a story. You have to start creating a mood. You have to start creating a feeling. So if you look at all three of them, so if you look at the first one, she actually has 3 pieces. She has a pant, a hoodie, and a dress. But if you look at all of her Instagram, if you look at her pictures, her architectural, her clean, her minimalist, as a buyer, when she likes all of my pictures and I go back and look at her Instagram, I already understand the brand just by pictures, right? Because people stop reading. If you look at Sparkle Bomb, right? She's colorful, she's fun. You don't even see a single product at this point because she doesn't even have a sample. Same thing for Chase the Sun Adventure Wear. She is an activewear line, not for like the surfer California beach boy. She is for the rugged mountain man that swims in lakes, right? So she is creating a story. She's creating a feeling just based on these pictures. This is what you want to do, especially in the beginning, especially your first year before you even get samples, and you start building the retention and the interest of these aggressive buyers that own boutiques and understand the industry. So I just want to say one more thing about Sparkle Barn. It's really cute because there's a really hard to get into store in Miami called Babalu that does accessories and fragrances. And they reached out to her and they said that when you debut your first line, we want it to be in our store. So this is the networking, the relationship, the cyber stalking that you need to do. So, ready? I'm going to do sales in 5 easy steps.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? I've heard people talk about outsourcing that to the.
No, absolutely not.
I was thinking that they have no control of your imagery if you're not doing.
That's not the point because you can give people, but the thing is, you're studying, you're learning, you're getting feedback, you're seeing what works, what doesn't work, how you build a relationship, right? So it's easy. Of all the things to outsource, that's not one of them. Especially in the beginning because it's so important to, you're not necessarily talking at this point, you're listening. And if somebody's doing it for you, what are you listening to? Just echoes, right? What they're telling you that they think might be important to you. So I would definitely not do that. So step number 1, homework number 1 is make a list of 100 retailers. Start following them on social media. Plan a clear email campaign. I'm going to show you quickly what some pictures look like. Follow up with open email. So when you use a system like Constant Contact or MailChimp, I'm not a big fan of MailChimp. I feel like it gets stuck in spam a lot. But it tells you reports of like who opens the email, who went to the Facebook, who went to social media, who forwarded to somebody else. And when you see all of that now, who are you going to call? The guy that didn't open the email or the guy that opened the email 3 times? Right. So this is how we start narrowing down and start, really understanding. Offers to send samples. So here's the other thing too. I never advise your first season to invest in a trade show. I know as a buyer, I never have time to even see the people I'm there to see. So the new guy is never going to get bought. So the idea is that we offer, so now I open the email, you call me up, hey Mercedes, thanks a lot for taking the time. Can I send you a couple of samples so you can feel my quality? If I'm interested, I will say yes. If I'm not interested, I'll say no, and I'll give you a reason why no. And the thing is that, and this is where it becomes kind of gray. Sometimes it's okay to push a little bit more. Well, can you give me a little bit more feedback? It's not for me. Nobody should ever tell you that. It's too expensive. Oh, why do you feel that it's expensive? Because I hang with this guy and that guy that are also in your store. Well, yeah, but that's my highest and I don't really want any more brands. Well, what price do you need to be at? Well, I'm more comfortable. You know what? Let me talk to my production people, see if I could accommodate you on that. You want to be able to have conversations. And it's okay. You have to ask. So we're going to send them the samples, and this is the most important thing. You need to follow up. Yes, question back.
In your email campaign, is that for sending marketing material, like photo shoots of the image of the...
So usually, here's the thing too. So I want to be very clear when I say nobody reads. So usually when I get an email from a new designer, it'll have a long story about the designer. Oh, she was born in Holland and she went to school. I don't give a shit, you know what I mean? What are you selling me, right? So now the idea is that it has one great picture. So now who's the lookbook question? Was that you? The lookbook is the emotion. Think of in the whole body of the business, this is the heart and the soul of the business. You have to have such beautiful imagery that when I look at it, I want to stare at it, right? And when you're staring at it, every moment of that impression that I get from the brand, even though it's a picture that nothing in it is actually sellable, it doesn't matter. Like, let's just go back for a second. Can I just show you, I don't know if you could see, do you see the cloud head in the center picture, the cloud head with the red dress? That could be a mood shot, even though it's a very famous artist that did that photo shoot. But if you sold shirt dresses, what a beautiful way of it's so artistic. And again, there's a lot of places where I want you to be cheap, but this is not one of them. You can't get your friend with an iPhone to take pictures of your other girlfriend who's really pretty. That doesn't work. And you know what? It always looks so amateurish. This is where I really want you to spend the money. And maybe it's important to hire a stylist, right? That's an added expense. But a stylist that can really take like a measly old tie and make it look like something like I have to have it, right? Because what are we doing? We have to create the emotion. And this is the lookbook. This is your Instagram. This is where we're communicating the DNA of the brand. Okay. So I'm going to give you 2 seconds on how to do all of this. First thing is we have to figure out who your competition is. And in the industry, we say, who do you hang with? So this is a really great American-made, contemporary, high contemporary brand out of California. And if you notice, every single brand, so here's another thing too. If you're really in love with a brand and they don't have a stock list, move on. Because that means that they're one of those smoke and mirror brands that everybody loves and they're the darling of every celebrity, but they can't pay the rent, right? You don't want to imitate that guy that can't pay the rent. You want the guy that has the stock list. So now if we look at her stock list, it'll give you the whole list. Of course, it's not going to give you the email address and the name of the buyer. You have to dig deeper and start looking at more information. So now let's just take the first store. Who would have known that there's such a great looking store in Anchorage, Alaska? Anybody would have gone there? No, right? You would think New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami. Anchorage, Alaska, Circular Boutique. Let's go visit her website. Wow, I love the brands that she has. She has a lot of contemporary, all the hangs. It's my right price point. What am I going to do? I'm going to start following her. And when I go to her Facebook, she has 2,000 followers for a store in Anchorage, Alaska. I think that's pretty decent. So now you know that she's a popular, she has 5-star ratings. And then you know what I do when I get really crazy? I start reading all the things that people write. Like, oh my God, I love this store. Oh, thanks for bringing that in. Oh, your girl was so nice to me. Those are the stores, those are your ambassadors. It's not your friend from the club that's going to be wearing the t-shirt. It's the store that's your ambassador. It's the store that becomes your best friend, your best fan, the one that's going to post it on their Instagram, the one that's going to tell people when they walk in the store, oh my God, you have to know about this new brand that I just bought at the show. I absolutely adore it, and you know what? I only bought 6 pieces. And that's who you want. And that's where you want to encourage. That's where you want to spend your money on doing that. Oh, email don'ts. Do not put every store that you want to sell to on there. Yeah, because I'm really jealous, and I hate when people do that. So make sure you drop off a card. Email don'ts. Here's another thing, too. I don't click on anything because I don't know if you're sending me a virus, right? So I'm not clicking. I'm not doing any work. And guess what? I'm also not doing reading. So this is not a good example. This is an example of how to track your emails. As you can see, Constant Contact says how many people we sent it to, how many bounced back, how many people opened it, how many people opted out, all of those things. The second email that you want to send is a clear line sheet. So remember, the buyer has to buy from these line sheet and from the sample that you sent me in the mail. And by the way, when I say you send a sample, you also put the return sticker so they send it back. And you don't send the whole collection, you send pieces from the collection. Usually they'll tell you what they want to see. So a couple of tips on the phone. Do not call on Mondays, and Fridays are also not such a great day, right? Because that's when the stores are busy, doing their own thing and looking at numbers. Don't leave a message every day because that's really desperate, and nobody wants to work with desperate. You want me to tell you a secret too? Nobody's going to return the call. So the best thing that you could do is actually ask, when is the right time to call, the buyer? Oh, you know what? Usually on Tuesday morning she gets calls. That's when you're going to call back. Don't even leave a message. Okay. Tricky questions. They're going to ask you, can I have an exclusive in my area? We get this a lot. And the answer to that always is, I don't go with the store that wrote me the biggest order. I go with the store that I feel is going to give me the best prestige because it's part of my marketing plan, right? The sizes, how do they come run? How do they come packed? What are your terms? In the beginning, it's always going to be credit card terms. Do you drop ship? The answer is absolutely not because that's the same as consignment. Is this a production sample? It is because you're making it in a production factory. Do you have any at once? Your first collection you won't, but your second collection you will because you'll be in a in-stock position. And when do you break price is a nice way of them asking you, when do you give me a discount? And the answer is never, because I could always sell it, direct to consumer. So payment terms in the beginning, we're just going to work straight up credit card terms. But some of the more established stores will ask you for net terms, and that's when you have to go to a bank to get factored because I don't want you lending money to anybody, so that's not the business that we're in. Okay. So this is kind of important. There are seasons when buyers buy, and I always tell my clients that is it important to be first to market. Earlier is better than later because and I'll give you like this example. So after Christmas, as a buyer, as a retailer, in December, at the end of December, I'm doing all my big sales, I'm doing all my markdowns, and I'm looking at my sales report, and I'm looking at my top brands, my middle brands, and the brands I lost money on. All those brands that I lost money on, I'm not going to buy again. So now $2,000 opens up, $5,000 opens up, $10,000 opens up, and it's the guy, when I'm doing this math and I'm doing my budget, that emails me and offers to send me a sample that's going to get those extra dollars.
What date
So,
was that?
I'm sorry?
What time was it, what date?
So here's the thing. So if it starts to show, so men's starts to show in January, right? And women's in February. So I would try to do the month before, sending out my emails, introducing myself, making sure that I'm really active on the social media so they know who I am, and that they're aware of me. It doesn't ship until August and September. So you see how many months you have: February, March, April, May, 4 months to do your sales. And if you don't get enough sales to hit your break even, it's okay to call the stores that place small orders and say, listen, you know what? I didn't get enough to meet my factory minimums. I'm going to try it again with some of my bestsellers, and I'm adding some new pieces to the next collection. I hope that I can count on your support then too. And I will tell you, 99% of the boutique owners that you have this conversation with that's really frank and honest will back you up 100% because they need and they want something new. The only way that we are going to survive, if I have the same crap that Amazon has, and Amazon has Amazon Prime Day where they're paying you to take shit in, right? How am I going to win there? I need to have the things that nobody else has. And this is you. And this is why you are so important and the backbone of our industry if it wants to continue to survive. So it is an excellent time to be in this business. So fall 2, usually they show it together. It's not necessarily important, but it starts to show in March and April, ships in November and October and November. And you see where I put the reorder? You're going to be in an in-stock position, so you will be able to replenish kind of quickly. Spring 1 shows in August and September, ships in January and February, reorders in February and March. So if you see, like right now, it's men market upstairs, right? So men's is always a month early. So it's July, then we go August to Vegas, then we come to New York for coterie. So we do like the circuit. But again, if you're following the stores and they're like, hey, I'm going to be in New York for coterie, you're like, so am I. I'm not showing a coterie, but can I drop off some samples at the hotel? Yeah, why don't you do that? That's what, and you know how you're going to know that? Because you're following on social media, right? When I said like cyber stalker, I wasn't kidding. Like seriously, but don't get creepy about it, but yes. So spring 2 starts to show in October, November, ships in March and April, reorders in May. Holiday and resort are 2 small collections that may be important to some brands, are not important to other brands, but they both show in May, they deliver in November, December, and reorder in January. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's all of it. It is all of it, because the minute that you're designing a line, you're selling a line, you're shipping a line, you're collecting money on a line, and it's like this really crazy hamster wheel. So I would say like the third reason, I've mentioned 2 already, that the designers give up is because they cannot take the pressure of this constant cycle. So by your third collection, that's when I start seeing like the burnout. And this is where you need the factory support to help you come up with a few new ideas, to twinkle something that's working, right? And look, let's face it, Diane von Furstenberg has had a wrap dress in her collection for 40 years. We could keep bringing stuff back, right? But how do we interpret it, make it new, make it our signature? That's where it has to always be refreshing. So I always like to leave it a little thought. If you're not moving forward, you are not standing still, you're actually getting left behind. So that's my thought for the day. This is my information. I hope to hear from you all soon. And please make sure that we have a card so I can send you the presentation. Yes, a question.
I thought your presentation was awesome, and I think we all should sing her happy birthday.
Oh, come on. Come on, thank you. Oh, that's so embarrassing. Oh. Are you going to make me cry? Thank you, thank you. I'm not calling on you next time. Thank you. All right. You're welcome.